it's Jack from Cultaholic.com back again with another review of AEW. Now, this week it wasn't Dynamite, was it? It was the exciting and enthralling Fight for the Fallen, or as Jim Ross called it, Fighter Fest. That was last week, Jim. That was last week and the week before. But yes, we saw last night Fight for the Fallen. But how good was Fight for the Fallen? There's only one way of finding out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. That's right, it's time for AEW Dynamite / Fight for the Fallen / Fighter Fest if you're Jim Ross. Graded. We started things off hot last night with a TNT Championship defense, the open challenge thrown out by Cody Rhodes, and who should answer it this week but Sonny Kiss. Now, we already knew that Sonny Kiss was going to be the challenger, so it didn't have that big surprise factor like when Ricky Starks, for example, was the challenger, but it did have a special entrance for Sonny Kiss with cheerleaders and choreographed dancing. And to be honest, I don't envy Sonny Kiss, because if I had to remember all the spots of a wrestling match and a choreographed dance at the start of the match as well, I'd probably lose my mind. Well, I lose my mind having to remember any of those things, and I lose my mind remembering what I'm doing on any given day, to be honest. But somebody who didn't lose his mind and who was very focused from the off was Cody, coming straight out the gate with a big pump kick to Sonny Kiss, and really showing that intensity that has characterized a lot of these TNT Championship matches. At one stage, Cody was kind of told off by Arn on the outside, who told him to get his head out of his ass and concentrate, and do you want to win this match? And showing a lot of tough love to Cody, who was all like, yeah, I'm going to focus, I'm going to concentrate, before, of course, immediately falling victim to some Sonny Kiss offense. And that offense by Sonny Kiss was flashy, it was flexible, it was innovative, it was all the things we like about Sonny Kiss, but ultimately it forced Cody to go to a dark place. Cody is especially angered when Sonny Kiss busts out a crossroads, a cheeky stolen finisher, not even towards the end of the match, in the middle of the match. And that leads to Cody throwing out rapid, big moves in succession. We've got an Alabama Slam on the ramp on the outside, we've got a vertebraker on the inside, we've got a big superplex as well, but Sonny Kiss continues to kick out. Cody is especially livid now and exposes the turnbuckle behind the referee's back. Very overtly heelish stuff there from Cody, but of course he himself gets thrown into the turnbuckle face first and gets rolled up for a very nice near fall from Sonny, but unfortunately it's only enough for two, and he doesn't quite get his hands on that TNT Championship. What a title change that would have been. But it's Cody who wins the day. He's getting lit up by a few big strikes from Sonny Kiss, but he ducks one, hits an immediate crossroads, and that's enough for the win. This opening match gets an A- grade from me. Lovely stuff from both wrestlers here. Sonny Kiss looked great, Cody looked great as well though, and the most important thing I took away from this was that Cody is slipping further and further towards that, in my mind, inevitable heel turn, and I can't wait. I want it so badly. Next up, tag team action between FTR and the Lucha Bros, who enter in, of course, the truck they stole from FTR, alongside the Butcher and the Blade, and then Pentagon and Phoenix hop out the truck and they walk down the side of Daly's place into the arena, and it just looks awesome. Like, the sky is dark, it's like later on at night behind them, and it looks so cool. I wish I was Pentagon. But in the ring, FTR are decidedly less impressed than I was. Dax Harwood has no time even for Pentagon's signature glove thing. You know, he throws it to the referee and he does the whole hey. I don't understand why he does that either. Harwood has no time for that either, stomping on the foot and getting things off with a lovely meaty brawl. Getting things off? No, I can't say that, can I? That sounds a bit dirty, doesn't it? As the minutes go on, this develops into the sort of match that's really interesting, because it's between two teams that are kind of total polar opposites, really. You've got FTR, everything they do is functional, it makes sense, it's tactical, it's quite simple at times, but it's executed flawlessly. And then you've got the Lucha Bros, who are taking more risks, they're doing more high-risk maneuvers, they're doing more high-flying maneuvers, and occasionally the spots are a little bit ragged or mistimed, but when they come off, it's obviously very spectacular. So two teams there with very different philosophies. And despite having radically different styles, the teams are portrayed as being quite an even match. At one stage, for example, there's two splashes from opposite members of like different teams, and the other person on the ground gets the knees up, and basically the long and short of it is all four men are down in the middle of the ring. And then it's up to Cash Wheeler, of all people, to hit maybe the biggest high-risk spot of the match, which surprised me no end. He goes for a big suicide dive into a tornado DDT on Pentagon on the outside. Pentagon is now out of action, but Phoenix is up on the top rope, springboard crossbody, and that takes out Cash Wheeler. Back in the ring, and we're down to Phoenix and Dax Harwood. And it's Dax who picks up the win for his team by just ripping Phoenix's mask off. Phoenix obviously covers his face, and Dax is able to roll him up and pick up the sneakiest, the dirtiest, the most dishonorable of 3 counts. I made that sound needlessly sensual there, didn't I? After the match, the Butcher and the Blade talk trash to FTR from the safety of the side of the arena next to the truck that they stole from FTR, but they're ambushed by the Young Bucks, who hit them with stereo super kicks and bring the stolen truck key to the ring as like a peace offering for FTR. And here comes Kenny Omega down the ramp as well with a cooler with beers in as a peace offering as well after the tension of previous weeks. And honestly, even though they're the heels, or like the sort of pseudo heels in this scenario, I'm fully on FTR's side because the Elite are so cocky. You can see walking towards the ring, they all think they're in a Western. Like Matt and Nick are like, "You miss your truck, huh?" And Kenny comes out with the beers, just all like, "Oh, I've got some beers for you boys." And I'm delighted when, again, needlessly sensual with the "got some beers for you boys" thing. But yes, I'm delighted when FTR just pour the beers over Kenny Omega's head and leave the ring. And Kenny is furious and the Bucks have to hold him back. And it's all great stuff. Another A- grade for this one. Not the Lucha Bros best match and not FTR's best match either, but a very good one still. And the storytelling is top notch. Next up, Chris Jericho is out alongside Santana, Ortiz and Jake Hager. And Chrissy J wants to explain the concept of demographics to us. Yes, if you've been following the whole AEW NXT war on Twitter, you'll have noticed, well, one, a lot of people are very sad because they're furiously taking one side or another, and why can't we just enjoy the good wrestling? But anyway, Jericho is fully bought in. I mean, I can understand why Jericho is firmly on one side because he's wrestling for one side. But this didn't totally work for me. I'll explain why. Jericho talks about how he's the big draw, even though they lost the overall rating. It's the demographic that matters most. And I think by introducing this argument to your product, you're exposing it to a group of people, like your wider audience, who might not even care. They might not even go on social media. They might not even see this argument waging war on Twitter. I don't know. It was a little bit strange. But if there's a character who's going to bring up this argument and try and hammer it home, despite it not really fitting in with the show, then Chris Jericho's the perfect guy, because he's a dad, isn't he? But also the crowd are booing him as he's going like, "Oh, I'm the demo god, I got the 18 to 45s in and we beat NXT." He doesn't mention NXT by name, but you know what he's saying. And the crowd are booing him, which is weird because they're booing him and basically saying, "Boo, we prefer NXT." I know that's not what they're really booing him for. They're booing him because he's Chris Jericho, but it did come across a little bit that way, and that was weird. But the segment rapidly improves once they leave the subject of demographics and ratings behind and start talking about Orange Cassidy, who of course Jericho beat recently. Jericho calls it one of the best matches in AEW history. He says it's one of his greatest matches in recent memory, and he also says there's not going to be a rematch, even though everybody wants one. The crowd chant that Jericho is scared, and obviously the Inner Circle aren't happy about this. Jericho says he's not scared at all, and right on cue, here comes Orange Cassidy. Not down the ramp, but out from the crowd. Now, earlier in the segment, Jericho and the Inner Circle have poured one out, some orange juice, into the ring for Orange Cassidy's dead career. Now, Cassidy one-ups the Inner Circle by giving a big thumbs down, like Batista himself, and causing orange juice to rain from the ceiling of the arena all over the Inner Circle. And Ortiz, true to form, takes a great comedy bump, slipping around on the orange juice, flailing all over, having a great time. Jericho is beside himself with rage. He demands that somebody throw him a towel. They do so from outside of the ring, and the towel's just Orange Cassidy's big face. Oh, japes. Now, you might think I'm overrating this segment slightly, but I'm going to give this one an A- as well. A third A- in a row. Who says I only give AEW B+? Now, I thought this was a great segment because of Jericho's reaction. Yes, on paper, the whole orange juice thing, it might be a bit of a DX prank, you know, not when DX were cool, like 2000s DX when they were looking a little bit old. But I thought Jericho's reaction 100% sold this because he was so furious. And then straight after this segment, he had to go on guest commentary, replacing Taz, and was just going on the most amazing rant to JR, who I think was kind of struggling to hold it together. Next up, we have the Elite. Of course, Kenny Omega was just humiliated by FTR, so is he going to lash out in this match? We'll find out. It's Kenny Omega teaming with the Young Bucks against Jurassic Express, all 3 members. And Kenny is underestimating Marco's stunt early on. He's not taking his t-shirt off. He's just shoving him around. He's really not showing him the respect that Marco's stunt deserves. And rightly so, Marco's stunt wins the opening exchange. Off the back of this little opening exchange victory, entry, Jurassic Express start to run wild. They hit their triple T move with the flippy round, push the windmill DDT or whatever it is. And Marco Stunt is so happy about them winning the match, not winning the whole match, but in the process of winning the match, that he flosses on the outside. I can't do it, I'm too old, I can't do it. I'm not even good at Fortnite. But as he's flossing, he eats a big super kick. That was a loud slap. I should be a professional wrestler. From Nick Jackson. Backstage we go as Luchasaurus and Kenny Omega have a little bit of a back and forth, and we see elsewhere in the arena that Hangman Page is watching this match and is joined by FTR. Very intriguing. Back in the ring, the spots are getting a little bit contrived for my liking. At one point we see Matt Jackson actually hold someone in place for a big multi-man Tower of Doom type destroyer thing over the top rope into the ring. So that sort of stuff is a little bit of a step too far for me, and it's what people accuse the Bucks of doing all the time, even though I think these days they're much better at that than people give them credit for. They're more storytellers in the ring these days, but they do still have a bit of an over-reliance on spots in them. After that's out of the way, Kenny Omega isolates Marco Stunt and just starts to go to town on him in really ruthless fashion. There's a V-trigger, Luchasaurus tries to stop another V-trigger by hugging Marco Stunt, but then of course Kenny just V-triggers Luchasaurus and then V-triggers Marco Stunt again. But Marco Stunt gets a roll-up and nearly picks up the win until Omega decides to end it with the one-winged angel. And then after the match, Kenny continues the assault on Marco Stunt. Now Kenny, when he's a babyface, is so ultra competitive a lot of the time in the ring, but after the bell, he's always like sickeningly gracious. He's almost too much of a nice guy, in contrast to his really fiery in-ring persona. After the bell here, he just continues to lay the right hands in on poor Marco. The Young Bucks have to drag Kenny off, and it's clear that FTR have gotten inside Kenny's head, and I am fearing for their title reign, because FTR have made friends with Hangman, they're antagonizing Kenny. It's not going to go well for the champs, is it? This segment gets an A- from me. I think the match was a B+, but the storytelling was so good that I'm going to bump it up to an A-. I think that's 4 A- in a row. What's going on? Next up, we have the Nightmare Sisters, which is Brandy Rhodes and Ali, accompanied by their manager Dustin Rhodes, of course, taking on the debuting tag team of Kenzie, Paige and MJ Jenkins. They're not going to win this, they're not going to win the match. So this is quite a novel concept. I know that it's not totally original to have tag partners who don't get along, but it's intriguing. I mean, Dustin's the manager. He obviously prefers Brandy, his sister-in-law, to Ali, who nobody really trusts right now. She's kind of wormed her way in. She's with QT Marshall, and everyone's thinking, we don't really like this girl in the Nightmare Collective. Wait a minute, was the Nightmare Collective Brandy's weird stable? No, we don't like her in the Nightmare Family, is what I meant. It's a very different thing to the Nightmare Collective. What a stable that was. But even though they don't like each other, Brandy and Ali have been racking up the wins on Dark and stuff like that. So we've got blind tags to each other, a lot of arguing. We've got Ali using a variation of Dustin's drop down uppercut thing, which works really quite nicely actually. And she points to Dustin on the outside and he's like, fair enough. Then we get Brandy cutting off the illegal woman by charging the ring with a spear, which allows Ali to hit her finisher, which is kind of a setup for a crossroads into an elbow. Is it like the Big Show's final cut? And if it is, it's time we brought that move back, lads, because when we talk about great finishes of the Attitude Era, the final cut does not get enough love. It does, it gets more than enough. And with that, the Nightmare Sisters win with a big final cut. Everyone loves it. This gets a C grade. It was a total squash match, and the action wasn't the most compelling around, but there's something going on here, and I like how throughout the card, AEW likes to have everybody in a little bit of a storyline, even a minor one like this, so I was all for it. Next up, Nyla Rose hits the ring to reveal who her manager is going to be. She's been teasing this announcement for a few weeks now, but she says, I'm not going to announce it myself. I'm going to let my new manager speak for themselves. And then, oh my word, we get a dubstep remix of Vicky Guerrero saying, excuse me, and then when the drop hits and it's, excuse me, that's not how it sounded at all, but try and imagine anyway. And as that happens, here comes Vicky Guerrero, of course shouting, excuse me, and getting in the ring to cut a big old promo with her new client, Nyla Rose. Vicky says when they decide it's time for Nyla to go back for the women's title, then it will be the perfect time. But for now, she's putting the entire women's locker room on notice. Nyla is going to steal every opportunity they've ever dreamed of. This only gets a B grade from me for now, because as much as I love Vicky Guerrero, and as well worked as this segment was, and as hilarious as the theme music is, I don't know if Nyla Rose needs Vicky. I wonder if Vicky could be better used with a different member of the women's division maybe, because Nyla can talk. Nyla's really good on the mic, and I don't know if we need Vicky there to get the most out of her. On the other hand, Cody's amazing on the mic, and Arn Anderson's his manager, and that still works really well. So, I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it yet, but I'm willing to give this pairing a chance, and I'm going to give it a B grade. And finally, Jon Moxley defending his AEW World Championship. He's back, and it is legitimately great to see him against Brian Cage, accompanied, of course, by Taz. Before the match, Cage insists that he is announced as the FTW champion, while commentary say that's not an officially sanctioned belt here, but oh my god, he's a badass because of it. Needless shot at Southern style commentary there, and I don't even think it was JR who talked about that, really. Sorry, Jim. Then Taz cuts a promo saying while Moxley's been sat at home with his little wifey, Brian's been wrestling a full schedule and training his ass off. He also addresses a promo, a little tiny promo that Moxley cut earlier in the show, where Moxley said he was going to target Cage's weakened bicep, his surgically repaired arm. So very interesting stuff there. Taz says, come on Moxley, bring it, and sure enough, the music hits, and here comes the champ. They brawl to start, but this is not your standard Jon Moxley brawl, and if there's one big strength of Moxley's title reign so far, it's that it's deepened his character in the ring. That's because we now know that Moxley is more of a strategic champion than we perhaps previously gave him credit for. He choked out Brody Lee, for example, and in this match, even though it was his usual brawling style, he went to the arm time and time again. I mean, he's just blatantly working the arm at points to a ludicrous degree almost. He hits a suicide dive into an arm lock, or Brian Cage tries to turn it into a brawl in the crowd area where the seats are, and instead Moxley just jams his arm through a guardrail and yanks it back. They get back to ringside and he's still going for the arm. Cage puts the guardrail against the ring and German suplexes Moxley into it, but once Moxley's done selling, he's targeting that arm again. But of course, Brian Cage is massive and tough, and you're never going to keep him down for long, and he starts to dominate with slams and suplexes, and Moxley's looking desperate. Of course, when Moxley's desperate, that's often when he's at his most dangerous, and he almost picks up a flash pinfall off a roll-up. Cage goes up top to show off his, is it surprising athleticism when we've seen it now quite a few times? It's still shocking to see a man of his size move like that. He goes for his moonsault and misses it, and Moxley goes straight back for the arm. Eventually, he gets the armbar fully locked in. Cage tries to escape, they're rolling around, Moxley is modifying the submission, and eventually Moxley ends up belly down, almost like a disarmer, but without sitting up, and he's facing Taz outside the ring, and he's got his boy locked in this armbar, from which there appears to be no escape. And Moxley flips off Taz from through the ropes, and Taz just looks livid on the outside, and he realizes that Cage is going nowhere, and he throws in his signature orange towel. Moxley retains the title, but the action is not over yet, as Cage is obviously livid and jumps Moxley after the bell. It looks bad for Jon, and then the lights go down, and when they come back up, Darby Allin is on the top rope. He leaps off and jams that skateboard right into the face of Brian Cage. And that's how the show ends, with Moxley and Darby Allin running off Taz and Brian Cage and seemingly setting up a new feud between Darby and Cage. Now, I think that's a good feud because obviously there was tension between Darby Allin and Taz just before Taz brought in Brian Cage. Cage obviously destroyed Darby Allin en route to winning that ladder match for the chip, for the #1 contendership. So I think this all makes logical sense. I enjoyed the match as well. It wasn't the best thing on the show, but it was decent. And I'm gonna give it, I think, a B+. So overall, this show gets an A-. I really enjoyed Fight for the Fallen. I think I preferred it, to either night of Fyter Fest, which is strange because on paper, I think, especially night 2 of Fyter Fest might have intrigued me a little bit more. But in practice, now that the shows have all happened, I think Fight for the Fallen was my favorite of the 3 out of Fyter Fest 1, 2, and Fight for the Fallen. This one seemed to knock it out of the park pretty much. So an A- is the overall grade. I really enjoyed it, but what did you think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Stay safe out there, stay positive. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you very soon.